Sangye Chodan Soki Shonamla Shenjabardu Dani Kyabsuchi Dagi Jinsol Jepa Sonamgi Drola Penter Sangye Druparsho Sangye Chodan Soki Shonamla Shenjabardu Dani Kyabsuchi Dagi Jinsol Jepa Sonamgi Drola Penter Sangye Druparsho Drola Penter Sangye Druparsho Drola Penter Sangye Druparsho and you don't they were done, they were good and the Barguchi, Sanjan Tamche, Dungotan, Dungi, Guran Dowaguchi, Sanjan Tamche, Dungame, they were on me, Trow Barguchi, Sanjan Tamche, Yerin, Jaranila, Nebetonyon, Mani, Barguchi, Oma Sobo was Shodo Saba Dama, Sobo was Shodo Home, Tomban Yitu Cure.
On the occasion for those teachings, to request those teachings, you would like to offer you a mandala, Lama.
Thank you, thank you.
Sa shi pergi dojik metok drum rela blinkshin yedek yen padi sanje shingdo mikde powayi drokananda tringla chiparasho idam guru ratna mandala kamni yeta yame.
So very auspicious for us to be able to meet together as a Sangha and celebrate the life and enlightenment of Jetsun Milarepa, the great yogi, Milarepa Champa. And Parinirvana here really just means he's passing away from this world. In other words, a kind of memorial of his death, you could say. And you know, a couple of weeks ago, one of my own great masters, one of the few great masters I have left, or teachers I have left, who was trained in Tibet, and a great Lama from those days. And at that time, when I was asked to make a video message for his celebration in Delhi of his many friends and students there, of course, in India International Center. And the word they use in Tibetan for someone's passing away, if you're a great master, is Gomparzos. He completed his life's activities, completed his life destiny. So it's not that he passed away or he died or something like that. The idea, it's like he put the final touches on that masterpiece painting of his or her life. And in that way, Parinirvana is used, Milarepa, pass beyond suffering, is sometimes used as another metaphor for the death of a great being or the passing of a great being. And Milarepa, a friend of mine in Washington, D.C., Greg Kruger, made a film called Tibet's Great Yogi Milarepa, or maybe just Milarepa. And he's mostly a Nyingma practitioner, and most of his teachers are Nyingma. And the Lama who was the director of the film was Nyingma. Greg was just the producer. I said to him, "My goodness, you Nyingmas, what are you making a film about Milarepa for? He wasn't a Nyingma, he was a Sanama, a new school guy." And the Lama, the director, laughed and he says, yes, but we all claim him. We all claim him. And it's very true. Milarepa was one of those figures who all schools celebrate and love with and embrace. And lineages coming from him are held and cherished in all the different schools. A guru yoga for Milarepa, I'm sure that in Tibetan world there's quite a number of them. I myself, many years ago, received an actual Milarepa initiation from Lama Zopa Rinpoche of Kopan. Was traveling, and he gave it in the States, in the Milarepa Center in Vermont. But the sadhana Guru Yoga method we're using here isn't from that lineage, although that source, although there are some similarities. Now, when we say Guru Yoga, connecting to the Guru, and this can be practiced in any of a number of ways. In fact, almost every sadhana we practice begins with some kind of Guru Yoga, especially highest yoga tantra ones, where we say a prayer to the lineage masters, and the top one dissolves into the next one all the time, from the time of the Buddha into our own teacher visualized above our head. And that person becomes a repository of all those past great masters. And that one dissolves into us, or becomes the size of a thumb and sinks from our central channel down to our heart, dissolves into us. And in this sense, Guru Yoga is a connection to, not to the people so much, or the personalities, or the life stories and the such, but to the enlightenment energies of all those masters. As I often point out, the Tibetans translated the word yoga as Naljor, Nal meaning authentic, and Jor meaning connecting to that, connecting to the authentic, connecting to the authentic of the spiritual enlightenment process. So rather than that Guru Yoga, which I received from Lama Zopa on that time, I'm using one which I translated many, many years ago and encountered and received many, many years ago from, and I read it or translated it with and received it from Dobum Tulku, my great master who passed away a couple of weeks ago in Delhi at the wonderful age of mid-80s. And he was the one who basically brought it to my attention and suggested I read through it and take it up as a practice. I also, by the way, after receiving the 6 yogas of Naropa from Kyabti Trijong Dorje Chang, later read through. When we say read the text here, it really means did a point-by-point introduction to all the practices of the 6 yogas of Naropa. So he wasn't the only one who did that, but he was the one who did it with me in greatest detail and precision, you could say. And so I thought, rather than use the lineage of Guru Yoga that I had received from Lama Zopa, I would use this one from the 7th Dalai Lama. And everyone's received a copy. And these kind of little texts in Tibetans are called Gom De. Gom means meditation, and De means recitation. And so usually it's a little text that we chant or sing, you could say, but I don't like the word singing very much, because Tibetan chanting is like saying, and if we think of singing, we often think like, hee 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 ha 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 ha, hee hee ha ha ho ho ha 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 ha. It's 11 at night here. I thought I'd better laugh a little bit at the beginning. So it's a kind of chanting, gom de. So the Tibetans use the word de, which reads more like chanting or recitation. And Tibetan, because Tibetan language is very monosyllabic, most words are just one or two syllables, very few are 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, like English and German, the Germanic and language group. So it's very beautiful for chanting. English isn't quite so, doesn't facilitate it quite so well, especially in translation from other languages, because of the need for precision of both words and meaning. But anyway, this Gonde, In the seventh Dalai Lama wrote it at the request of one of his students, but he wrote it actually as a method of fulfilling the 19 samya of the 5 Buddha families. In other words, he wrote it for a 6 yogas practitioner who wanted to use it as a daily recitation and meditation that would also could be used as a substitute for the usual guru yoga that's used as known in Tibetan as Tuntruk Lama Nalja, or the 6-session guru yoga, which is basically a sort of a chanting thing in which if you don't actually manage to satisfy the samya of the 5 Buddha families, you just chant them. And at least you did them vocally and visually if you didn't do them physically. So I took that text and I basically cut it down and made it into a simple guru yoga for a practice, for a use of my own self, and also because I really like the 6-session guru yoga for the 5 Buddhas that was written by Pabanka Rinpoche. I think that's really wonderful. It's almost like a hip hop rhythm to it. Because I don't like the neck of the But so the one by the Milarepa, I wanted to use for a simple guru yoga practice on occasion when I wanted to connect with my 6 yogas lineage, you could say, more clearly, more precisely, and also just with Milarepa. And because today is a celebration of his Parinirvana, the completion of his life deeds. Therefore, I thought it would be a wonderful, wonderful piece to use and introduce. When I received that empowerment from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the commitment was to do 100,000 of the Milarepa mantra before dying. And I thought, well, I could do them very quickly, but then I could just die any old time. Whereas I take it doing them very slowly. I received this initiation like 40 years ago from Lama Zopa. I still haven't finished his 100,000s. It's a kind of guarantee of my life not ending faster. This is Irish logic on mantra counts. So yeah. Actually, I've probably done the mantra quite a few times over, the mantra count of 100,000 several times over, but not in a formal way using his sadhana, because very often when I'm on teaching tours around the States and I have a 6-hour, 8-hour, 10-hour drive, I'll drive them. Guru Hasabasa Sava Seti Pala Hong Kong. Oh my Guru. So Hasabasa Sava Seti Boom Boom. So I've gone through many, many recitations of the mantra and absorption of the blessings of the lineage coming from Milarepa. So often, as I said before, every school likes to claim Milarepa because he's such a wonderful, wonderful person, and his lineage, of course, passed to Gampopa and Rechungpa and 18 repas, or the white cloth cotton clads, as they're sometimes called. And if you ever get a chance to go to Punakha in Bhutan, there's the Dzong, which is sort of a fortress monastery combined in Bhutan at a place called Punakha. They have one chapel which just all the walls just have the 18 repas, which is very rare to see as frescoes. Usually you just get the main ones thrown in there, but all 18 are there. So in celebrating Milarepa's Parinirvana, we're really celebrating the fact that here is a being who didn't become a monk, grew up and had a kind of a he grew up as the son of a wealthy businessman. So he grew up, you could say, with a silver spoon in his mouth, although in his case it was probably a golden spoon in his mouth because his father was a very wealthy businessman. And when he's in his teens, his dad died and of some illness, and his uncle and aunt basically stole the family fortune, left the mom and Milarepa destitute. And the mom extracted a vow from Milarepa that he would get revenge. And so Milarepa's one reason he's celebrated is he therefore went for revenge. It said he studied black magic with a Bunpo Lama, used it and caused the death of 32 of his uncle's clan, or his aunt's clan. And so I remember talking to one of the great Kagyu Lamas. It's one of the reasons we love Milarepa so much is he killed 32 people and still achieved enlightenment. So those of us who have only killed 2 or 3 or so, we've got an even better chance of enlightenment than had Milarepa. I think, in ancient societies, people had to defend themselves very often against thieves and bandits and all of these things. So not only that, but what about the lesser crimes, sins, and misdemeanors, like a robbery and stealing this, that, and the other, and so on. Various kind of negative karmas, baggages, sacks of negative karma that people carry around as luggage on their backs. If Milarepa, having such a very strong negative karma, could still achieve enlightenment, it means those of us who have committed less negative karmas have an even better chance. He was sort of making that point. I don't know if it's really a logic and fully logically sustainable if we're to meet a great dialectician. But I myself have no experience because I've never collected any negative karma that I'll confess to. But I think Milarepa became so very wonderfully popular because first he came from a hardship background, a very wealthy background, and then a hardship time, and then kind of criminal activity, and then had a change of heart and felt great sadness over the negativities he had created and went in search of a spiritual master, an enlightenment master, encountered Marpa, trained under him, and eventually achieved enlightenment. And of course, the lineage of 6 yogas that we practice, that I teach all over the world for the last 25 or 30 years, comes from Marpa to Milarepa, down to Gompopa, to Gompopa's greatest disciple, Pamatrukpa, and to his great disciple, Jigdan Sungam, the founder of the Drikung school, and comes down through, after that, through many, many, many schools. And in my own life, it has been one of the most beneficial practices in a continual way. I mean, some practices can benefit one for a week or 2 weeks or a month, and then one might feel one has kind of outgrown them and grown into something else. But the 6 yogas of Milarepa are like an old pair of beloved shoes that you refuse, that are just so comfortable and carry you so successfully everywhere you're going. I have a wonderful pair of shoes like that in Canada, so I've had it on Everest 2 or 3 times. It's been on 2 koras around Mount Kailash and I've taken on at least 10 pilgrimages through Tibet and Bhutan and so on. And everyone's always saying to me, Lama Glenn, those shoes, they're so old and wrinkled and scratched up and cracked. Let us buy you new shoes. And I say, sure, and they do. And I put them in the box somewhere and put on my old ones. And 5 years later, they say, where are those beautiful shoes we left? I can't quite remember. But 6 yogas of Naropa is kind of like that. It's something beneficial all the way to enlightenment and in every situation in one's life. And for that, we have to thank the great Milarepa, without whom that lineage would not have survived. Now, when we do a Guru Yoga practice, every great Tibetan Lama's Sungbum probably has a collection known as Lama Naljor, Gebebum or something like that. It'll be a collection of the Guru Yoga texts that master wrote at the request of various disciples. I think the 7th Dalai Lama's Sungbum, I can't remember, it's 25 or 30 Guru Yoga texts that he wrote, each one at the request of a different disciple, and always saying something like, my favorite Yidam is Manjusri. Would you write me a Guru Yoga based on Manjusri? My favorite Yidam is Tara. Would you write me a Guru Yoga based on Tara? My favorite, his sort of lineage guru is Milarepa. Will you write me a Guru Yoga based on Milarepa? You are my favorite guru. Would you write me a Guru Yoga based on you? And it's quite common for lamas to do that. They use their own name. In his case, he uses Kelsam Gyatso. And he'll say things like, and in this age in Tibetan is Kelpa, of great opportunities, which is Zong, Kelsam. We must cross the ocean to enlightenment. So it'll blend in such kind of poetics. And I translated like maybe a 30 or a 40-page Guru Yoga together with Lama Chopat Sok, written by Jogo Khyentse, based on focusing on the first Khyentse Rinpoche's incarnation. It was written at the request of his disciple, Trulshik Rinpoche, who people who have been to Nepal will know from his monastery on the south of Everest. And if you can remember your previous lives, you'll know him from his monastery on the north side of Everest prior to the Chinese invasion, when that monastery was destroyed and he had to move to the Nepal side of Everest. So every Lama has written many Guru Yoga practices. There's many based on Tsongkhapa, the first Drikung master, Pamotrukpa, the first Karmapa, and various Sakya Lamas, Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, and so forth. And each of them has their own charm, and one chooses usually one which one likes to do oneself. So this one is especially good for Chakrasambhara practitioners. And so I'll just chant through it quickly and say a few words on it. And then we'll dedicate merit and all achieve enlightenment faster than Milarepa. I think I said it took Milarepa something like 20 years to achieve enlightenment. Once with one of my gurus in Dharamshala, I said, Milarepa achieved enlightenment. It took 20 or 25 years. Is it still possible to achieve enlightenment? He says, well, of course, it's even easier to achieve enlightenment now than it was then, because there's been so many great masters since then. The lineage has grown ever stronger, stronger, stronger. High on the snowy peaks of Tibet, a yogi pursued austere practice and burned the forest of kleshas. Thus, through skillful means, his wisdom soared in the sky of truth, the way things are. So this is a kind of a verse of the 7th Dalai Lama begins with 2 verses of homage to Milarepa. And he's mostly known for his austere practice in remote caves. And when he traveled around many times, he was invited to live in this town, and one of the kings of Bhutan even offered him to build him a palace and give him a couple of wives and his own temple and all that. But he said, actually, I don't need any of those for a couple of wives. I've got my side channels, and for my main wife, I have the central channel, and then there's a tumo, which keeps me completely. It's like the best palace of my body, and the cave where I'm in is the most beautiful place on the planet with the best possible view. So he's famous for practicing caves. And when you travel around Nepal, Bhutan, Tibet, those areas were, and of course in olden days, that was all Tibet. But these days, under the modern map, some is in Tibet, which is now under China, some is in northern Nepal, which was basically when Nepal became a country from the 400 years ago or so, became part of the Gurkha kingdom. And when Bhutan got independence from Tibet, or, you know, what do you call, went their own way, we should say, became a separate kingdom, and then the British sort of pried them away from Tibet. And you go out to Mount Kailash, all those regions, we can find those caves where Milarepa meditated. And from that time, these caves have been a place of great pilgrimage. I'd actually planned to use a background in this video using a photograph in the Milarepa cave that I took many years ago. Nyelam is where he did his first 3-year retreat. I decided not to use it because whenever I move, it looks like I'm coming in and out of some sort of psychedelic art movie from the late 60s. Where is it? There we are. Da da dum, bum bum, ba da da dum, la dum, da 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 dum. So I thought I would use this, but I noticed it kind of makes a lot of shining and moving, and it makes a kind of a kaleidoscopic look. My hair goes, wow, ooh, wow. Ooh. So we'll go back to none. But when I was in that cave of Milarepa many years ago, at the cave down below is Milarepa's cave, and up above is now a little hut where there are 3 or 4. It was basically a building that had 3 or 4 little rooms, roughly 6 by 6 feet, and only about 5 feet tall, so not tall enough to stand up in. And thus Rechungpa was one of the meditators who did his retreat in there. And that image I just put up came from that cave. The temples were destroyed during the little temple complexes that have been built around that cave in later years for traveling pilgrims. Were destroyed by the communists in the mid-60s during Cultural Revolution, but were destroyed. And the first Dalai Lama, the Amitayas Hayagriva lineage that we all practice, and Jonas and Gosha have become expert yogis and yoginis in that lineage, comes from the Milarepa, comes down Rechungpa down to the first Dalai Lama. So that painting there is of the first Dalai Lama, who's the one who wrote the big, sort of probably, I think, the first big commentary on that. I don't know about big, but the first thorough commentary, we could perhaps say, on that lineage of practice. So here, a yogi pursued austere practice. So mostly lived in caves, and basically these Tibetan caves generally have kind of solar heating to them. Usually there's southern exposure, and there's usually water quite close by. And they usually have beautiful views out over the valleys. So I know it's the Mahayana Sutra Alankara, I think it is, describes the 8 perfect qualities of a meditation retreat in the mountains. And one of them is being high up with the land below you, dropping down, and in the distance rising up again. It's a kind of a feng shui, perhaps I were to use a Chinese way, or the perfect geomancy for auspicious meditation. Another one of his I've been in is when you drive out by Kichu, which is the way Atisha went into Tibet a couple of, about 100 years before Milarepa, or 75 years maybe before Milarepa. And his cave there is very, very beautiful. Then he's got 2 caves out on Kailash. I've been to both of those. Very, very wonderful. So pursuing practice burned the forests of kleshas. In other words, burned all of these negative mind states and accomplished enlightenment. Thus, through skillful method, his wisdom soared. In other words, he kept together both method and wisdom. Soared in the sky of truth. Chugi Ying in Tibetan, Dharma Dhatu, the way things are. So this Dharma Dhatu, because that's such a big word in the Milarepa lineage, Chogyam Trungpa, when he established these centers in the States, the first centers he established were all called Dharma Dhatu. And he established some dozens of them in different cities. His name was Milarepa, laughing Vajra, so Hasa Vajra, Shepe Dorje in Tibetan. So I think that's a cute name for a person, laughing Vajra. The people's delight, a mountain towering over all yogis, at his golden feet, I offer this prayer, causing the vital energy of realization to enter the drop of Vajra life envisioned at the heart. In other words, Milarepa's main teaching was on the 6 yogas of Naropa and Mahamudra. And in the 6 yogas, we generate the Vajra body and then bring the Mishikpe Tigle, the undying drop, to the heart and meditate. Draw all the energies of the 5 senses and of the coarse body into that drop at the center of the heart and go into state of, you could say, near-death experience and meditate from that dimension. So this is in reference to his yoga of undying life. So those are just introductory verses, and begin the meditation the standard way, 21 breaths, refuge, bodhicitta, 4 immeasurables. Recite the Svabhava mantra and take a bath in emptiness. The nice thing about taking a bath in emptiness is you can do it fully closed. Come out of emptiness, engage in Milarepa yoga. Be mindful of the instructions, and the visualized image appears in the form of Milarepa, but in essence is one's own guru, emanated in as Milarepa, and is of one taste with one's own Buddha nature. So I'm sure those of you who have practiced Tibetan Dharma, Vajrayana for long will know when we ever say guru, or we say yidam, or any of these terms, then we'll say nampa tangowo. In nampa means in aspect. So it looks like a yidam, or it looks like the guru. So it can be whatever it is, looks like that. But in essence is this. And in deeper nature, in reality, it's a deeper nature of one's own mind. So those 3 things are mentioned. In the skies before me. And so the first is what's known as in Tibetan as the mikpa, which means the visualization, or it also can be known as the kyepa, the generating, the meditative image. In the skies before me, the wisdom of bliss and void manifests as a field laden with jewels, adorned with medicinal herbs, beautiful lotuses and kingly trees, filled with songbirds. And of course, when you go to these mountains of Tibet, if they're above the tree line, you don't get trees filled with songbirds, but in the valleys below you do. So he mostly frequented the southern Himalayas, not the dry, arid plateau in the north. And so those valleys were sort of rich, fertile valleys. From the sky, it's kind of amazing, like sky cameras. It just kind of, these valleys look like little ribbons between big, huge mountains. But the valleys are very, very fertile. And of course, filled with songbirds and gardens of jewels and medicinal herbs. A name for Tibet, one of the names for Tibetan popular jargon is the land of medicinal herbs. Seated at the mouth of, and I've got a very good, very dear Lama friend in Nepal from Bhutan, a Tibetan doctor friend. And whenever I go to Tibet, there's many herbs that grow in Tibet that even in Nepal, they aren't strong enough. You have to get higher up in the altitude to get them. And I'd go in and often I would collect $1,000 or so from my various pilgrims that I was leading on the pilgrimages, and we'd buy those herbs from the Menzakong in Lhasa and carry them out and donate them to his clinic. Can you get a Rinchen Mongjor? It's very hard to find this year. Rinchen Dashel, and so on. And there, seated at the mouth of a mountain cave. So often if you see paintings of Milarepa, he's often shown sitting at a mountain cave. And it's very beautiful. Those kind of meditation caves in Tibet, often outside they have a little plateau, almost like a balcony. There is my root guru in the form of Milarepa, the laughing Vajra. So it looks like Milarepa. It's really my own Lama. And but in essence represents the deeper nature of my own mind and my whole enlightenment quest. His body radiant with lights of the 5 colors. This means, in other words, the 5 wisdoms of the 5 dakinis. Legs in the half Vajra posture. And his body has a greenish hue, often said green because he didn't eat a normal diet of hamburger, of McBurgers or Big Burgers or chicken wings or Kentucky Fried Chickens, fish and chips. Most of the cave dwellers in Tibet in the high altitudes, stinging nettles grow everywhere, and they're one of the world's superfoods. It's amazing if we could transplant all the corn farms in the middle of America that are used to feed beefs and just plant nettles. We could all just sit at home having nettle tea. We wouldn't need much else. And so he would stinging nettles, and then a little bit of, I remember 1950s, this one Lama did a long retreat, and I was reading his biography, and when he'd go into retreat, he'd take a bag of barley flour, so say 50 pounds of roasted barley flour, pre-cooked, half a dozen chunks of butter, and some tea and some salt. And then he'd do his 6-month retreat with just that, and just picking wild parsley, wild onions, a few wild berries to throw in it. And by the way, that must be quite healthy, because my favorite country and Western singer, Willie Nelson, when I can't remember, just before I left Canada to fly over here, had his 90th birthday, and all he eats is oatmeal 3 times a day with a few berries and nuts thrown in. And there he is, 90 years old, and they were doing a live concert in honor of his 90th birthday. And even at 90, on that oatmeal and a few stinging nettles, he could still remember the lyrics to "When I'm crazy, crazy for feeling so lonely." Mama, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys. Keith Richards, who's almost as old, but lives on goodness knows what, mostly fish and chips, I guess, showed up and did a few pieces with him, as did another 20 of the world's sort of North American most famous singers. But Milarepa mostly lived on roasted barley flour, which was the main staple in Tibet. And picking, and you pick dry and crush stinging nettles, so you just throw in a few in when you make barley soup. Except for getting a tad constipated, it's a very healthy diet. So therefore, he has a greenish hue, and often in paintings he'll look a little bit green. From his lips, a Vajra song resounds melodiously, far and wide. Often he's shown in this posture. And Nicholas Roerich, a Russian-born New York artist who lived and died in India, often did a painting which he called Milarepa the Listener, but this is really the singing mudra. La 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 ho, ah he ah ra li ho. If you take your hand down, you'll hit a bum note somewhere. And so he's very famous for his mystical songs. How many of those he wrote himself, and how many are later creation by Trungpa Heruka, the drunkard Heruka, the drunken yogi Heruka, a very brilliant genius. But there was a time when they used a lot that was very popular in Tibet to call yourself a drunkard, because you were drunk with the wisdom of emptiness, or the crazy yogi. And of course, Chogyam Trungpa, he liked that term because he was a little bit of a drunkard and a little bit crazy. So he used the word crazy wisdom. He very much popularized. But he was, again, very drunk and crazy in the mystical sense. Also, the second Dalai Lama signed many of his poems in the same way. The crazed, the drunk, crazy beggar, Gendung Gyatso. And I once asked the Dalai Lama about it, and he says, yeah, the reason I call him crazy is because if you have understanding of emptiness and the understanding of dependent origination, your understanding is as different from ordinary people as is the understanding of a completely crazy person. So his songs have been collected into something called the 100,000 Songs of Milarepa. There's really only about 75 or 80 of them, but, rounded up to the nearest 100,000. It's not there's 75,000, there's only 75. Not rounded up to the nearest 100,000. He sits amid the brilliant Hilong, his white cotton cloth like a web of light at his heart's a two-armed chakra samvara in union with Vajra Yogini. So for practitioners of Tantra, and especially female Tantra, putting chakra samvara and Yogini at the heart is a key. And the initiation I received from Lama Zopa had just Vajra Yogini at the heart, not in the Naropa tradition, but in the dancing on one foot tradition. And at his heart, the syllable hum. In other words, these are known as the Trisattva, or Sampasum in Tibetan, the three stacked beings, the Samya Sattva, the Yeshe Sattva, wisdom Sattva, and Jnana Sattva, and the Samadhi Sattva. Light bursts forth from the hung in his heart, and some of the limitless ocean of peaceful, wrathful Buddha forms. They come from all directions, dancing, magical dances. In other words, they come in the forms of dakas and dakinis, and dancing yogis and dancing yoginis. So they're not like sedate, like begging monks walking around with a begging bowl like that, but they're kind of really a little bit more like on the disco side of things, you could say. Clouds of wisdom, compassion, and power appear in the sky and release a rainfall of transforming powers, a shower of inspiring blessings. So this compassion, wisdom, and power, we've discussed that many times in different classes, in different sessions, but basically these three, compassion, wisdom, and power, are often said to be the three essential natures of enlightenment. For enlightenment, we need full compassion for every living being, We're not leaving out even one. And we need wisdom which penetrates to Ji Nangwat and Ji Tawa, things just as they are on the appearing level, and Chi Tawa, the beingness of things beyond the apparent side. And for power, the ability to maintain compassion and wisdom in every moment, every situation, like that. So these appear like clouds in the sky and release a rain of transforming blessings. Transforming powers, a shower of inspiring blessings. Wondrous yogi who attained the Vajrabhati, whose speech was endowed with Buddha's 60 qualities, mind was great bliss, spontaneously aware of all knowable things. Marvelous Guru, I invoke you. And then they do the 7-limb prayer of prostration, offering, and so forth. I'll read that very quickly, just as a kind of a loan. Tibetans love to give loans. You can read things without saying much about them. In my case, I can never do that. I'm always tempted to throw in a few little asides. Here, I'm a PS, a PSS, a PPP, PSSS. Golden bowls of crystal clear water, flowers tossed to earth by the gods, incense with fragrance that pervades the universe, butter lamps with light equal to that of the sun and the moon. That is one hell of a butter lamp. Exotic perfumes that invoke joy, foods of 100 satiating flavors, and delightful songs to fill the skies. These and all things real and imagined, in their outer, inner, and secret forms, I create with the force of samadhi and offer to you in the presence of the Buddhas. O venerable yogi, who in one lifetime attained the state of perfect Buddhahood by practicing intensely day and night, I rejoice in your wondrous deeds. Turn countless wheels of Dharma that protect from samsara and nirvana. Release your magnificent Vajra speech, one sound of which brings liberation. For as long as the sun and moon shine, send your enlightened energy to this world, mysterious emanations to dance into the lives of spiritually mature beings. Whatever positive energy is generated by my devotions to you, all of it I dedicate to attaining enlightenment for the benefit of all living beings. So that's that's kind of a standard offering of the 7-limbed devotion, which is a part of the Avatamsaka Sutra, or taught by Buddha in the Avatamsaka Sutra, but here written in very eloquent poetry by Gyawa Kyesong Gyatso, the 7th Dalai Lama, and translated at least 50% as poetically by moi. And sometimes if we like one of the offering section, you can always throw in a mandala offering, etc. And then we do the mantra recitation. So you're visualizing Milarepa, at his heart is chakra samvara and consort, and at their hearts the syllable hum. And at the home, surrounded by the Guru mantra, Oma Guru Hasa Vajra Sarvasiddhi Pala Hum. So this is the way I learned it, and the way that's most commonly said. I've heard a Nyingma Lama do it just Oma Guru Hashra Vajra Hum. So if you got to do 100,000 of them very quickly, and you're told by the initiation you have to do 100,000 before you die, and you know you've only got 3 days left to live, you leave out that Sarva Siddhi Pala, and you just go, Oh ma Guru Hasa Vajra Hum. Oh ma Guru Hasa Vajra Hum. Oh ma Guru Hasa Vajra. So anyway, the longer mantra, Oma Guru Hasa Vajra Sarva Siddhi Hum, is we see. And we also see it with the word pala put in. I like pala. Pala means is like to greatly increase. And sarva siddhi means spiritual realization or spiritual power. So, no, we don't want to be like some of those real dumb Dharma students who are devoted to a Lama year in, year out, decade in, decade out, and are as dumb as sticks after 20 or 30 years of practice as they were dumb as sticks on the first day of practice. How do we not remain as dumb as a stick, or even worse, as dumb as a tick on a stick? Is by giving rise to sarva siddhi, the realizations. And how do we give rise to the realizations? By tupa sampakampa, receiving clear instruction, contemplating them. In other words, understanding, developing a very clear, accurate, precise understanding so we can actually practice them correctly rather than like, just sort of humdrumming through them as like a parrot. The seventh Lama in a poem, he says, some meditators are just like marmots. When a marmot comes out of the cave, it never moves. It just looks, sits, and it moves its eyes around very slowly. And it looks like a meditator the way it's sitting there. And of course, the reason it's doing that is it doesn't want any bird or hawk to see it move, because it's this movement that gives it away, and it looks around and very slowly turns its head, looks that way, and looks that way. So seventh Lama says some meditators can be as dumb as a marmot. In other words, the marmots are smart in many ways, but when it comes to meditation, they're not that adept. They haven't received the instruction clearly. They're really just looking for a hawk not to be eaten, which is important. You don't want to get eaten, not to put down not getting eaten as a destination. But we need the sarva siddhi, and we need pala. We need it to increase within ourselves. We ourselves need to become more compassionate, more wise, and more powerful. We need those three qualities as said above. So I'll say this 3 times and maybe recite it after me as a kind of a transmission of the mantra. Om Guru.
Om Guru.
Hasa Vajra.
Hasa Vajra.
Sarva Siddhi.
Sarva Siddhi.
Pala Hum.
Pala Hum.
Om Guru.
Om Guru.
Hasa Vajra.
Hasa Vajra.
Sarva Siddhi.
Sarva Siddhi.
Pala Hum.
Pala Hum.
And then a 3rd time. Om Guru.
Om Guru.
Hasa Vajra.
Hasa Vajra.
Sarva Siddhi.
Sarva Siddhi.
Pala Hum.
Pala Hum.
And as you do the recitation, you can visualize Milarepa in front of you, thinking it looks like Milarepa, and essence is my own teacher, and in deeper essence, it's the very nature of my own natural enlightenment mind, or my own Buddha nature. And as you do this, now that you imagine that just clouds or waves of energy emanate forth from body, speech, mind, from the 3 levels and the 3 kayas, and totally transform your body with energizing waves of energizing power, and uplift your thoughts and emotions with, again, waves of uplifting radiances, and then the same with your mind. And that when we speak of in Mahamudra, I often list, we speak of the 4 kinds of guru, the guru, which is the ultimate nature of your own mind. This ultimate nature is a secret thing, because people will walk around looking at everything except their own deeper nature and your own experience. Many people have lots of experience, but their experience never takes them any deeper. The experience just becomes a kind of, combination of ups and downs, happinesses and sadnesses and so forth. So learning from your own experience, the guru, which is your experience, and the guru, which is instruction. And the guru, which is instruction, is only useful when we've actually put it into practice. And then our human teacher, and our human teacher is only useful if he or she gives us instruction, correct instruction, authentic instruction, unbroken lineage instruction. And that touches into our experience, and we're able to bring that into our experience, not just on our meditation cushion, but between meditation sessions, when we get up and walk around, whatever we learned and whatever on our meditation cushion we experienced, we can carry that between meditation sessions. The J-top, after we were energized through meditation. And each of those sessions should take us, open the window a little bit more widely upon our own sky-like Dharma Dhatu nature. Recite 20 or 108 times. And so each time you just sort of have the feeling that your whole body becomes filled. Now, some people like to bring the guru to the top of the head and do the mantra with the guru Milarepa sitting on the top of your head, and have the sense this is supposed to like bring your energies up a little bit and help to open your upper chakras a little bit. And at the time of death, then you'll think, oops, the top of my head, and then you'll leave your body by the Brahma aperture, said to be the most auspicious exit. Other people like to do it at the heart. And so I think you start with in front at least, and if you want to do one of the other two ways, just do it and do the mantra from one of those other two ways if you prefer them. Doing at the heart is said to have the benefit that it can help you to bring energy into the heart chakra and open the heart chakra. The downside of doing it at the heart chakra is if you upset the natural flow of energy in the 8 heart chakra petals, then if you do that too hard or too early in your unfolding lotus of experiences, it can give you a little bit of anxiety. You can become like a little bit restless and find it can make your sleep a little bit not so easy. It can you lie down to sleep and the energy will just start flowing around and you will feel not sleepy. And if you do it on your head before that's the right time to do it. And also it can create some people can get headaches as it is a bypass. So some people begin with doing it in front, but other people, if you've been practicing for 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years, will prefer to do it on top or in the center of your heart with no negative side effects. Zero, zilch, nada. I was trying to think of something in some other language, but that's about it. So let's do 108 of those mantras, or maybe Jonas can do them and do the mantra count.
Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum.
Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Om A Guru Hasa Vashwa Sarva Siddhi Pala Hum. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Lama Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Lama Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Lama Guru Hasa. Lama Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Lama Guru Hasa. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava. Oma Guru Hasa Vaja Sava Siddhi Pala. 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 Oma Guru Hasa Vaja
Om A Guru Hasa Vashva Sarva Siddhi Pala. Om.
At the conclusion, the Guru comes to the crown of one's head, shrinks to the size of a thumb, descends to the center of one's heart chakra, where he dissolves into light and merges with one's own body, speech, and mind. Sit for some time in a sphere of union with the Guru. One's own perfect Lama is more kind than all the Buddhas of all directions. Oh, my Guru, who appears here in the form of Milarepa, bestow blessings that all practitioners may meet with perfect teachers and follow their instructions with pure thoughts. So usually at the end of every meditation session in the Tibetan world, in all schools of Tibetan Buddhism, there's some kind of, they call it key points in practice, aspiration, Munlam path of good thoughts or path of aspirations. So just like we ourselves, if one has met a good meditation teacher, spiritual master oneself, it's wonderful that others too may meet great beings and be inspired. So in the Buddhist world, we don't say, may they only meet Buddhist teachers and never meet any like New Guinea headhunters, because to each of his own. But we do think that the Enlightenment path does hold some of its own unique qualities, exalted qualities. A human birth with spiritual endowments is fortunate indeed, held but for a moment. Inspire me to take life essence by avoiding the 8 worldly winds. So the songs of Milarepa make this kind of statement very often about how important it is we should see our body like a wish-fulfilling jewel, a precious jewel. And to remember impermanence, how we feel strong. We think we'll be alive tomorrow, next year, next week, next decade, another 10 years, another 20 years. But to keep in mind that this life of ours and the precious opportunity, it's something which has a expiry date on it, and only if the package is unopened will it even make it to that expiry date. Some other thing could cause it to end earlier. The evening of life approaches, the shadows of dusk lengthen. Soon breath is lost like a passing stream. Inspire me to always abide in wisdom and to dedicate my time to integrating Dharma into my life. And Dharma here really just means wisdom, spiritual wisdom in our life, or compassion, wisdom, and power. These three qualities, perhaps we could say. And Dharma doesn't mean Buddha Dharma. It just means any spiritual wisdom tradition. Carried along in a raging torrent of negative karma and careless ways, the beings are washed into the dungeons of the lower realms. Inspire me to live in detachment from ordinary samsaric cravings through seeing that the indulgences of humans and gods are not much more than a mountain of excrement. I've never seen a mountain of excrement, but it's not something I hope to see anyway. The closest I remember, I was in Ladakh once, and we were staying in a hotel, and there was only one bathroom in that little house, and there were about 10 of us, and the Dalai Lama was, giving a kala chakra. This was in like summer of 1976, I think it was. So a long time ago. Many of you were there, but in your previous life. Any of you born after 1977 were probably there. Anyway, I couldn't wait. I had to go out, and I walked outside in one particular direction. I came to a field as big as like 4 or 5 football fields. And it was all poo-poo villagers who couldn't wait. What's that expression? When you gotta go, you gotta go. A man's gotta do what a man's gotta do. Caught in the chain of grasping at I, the living beings, in many lives my mother, boil inside with the heat of delusion, and outside are wounded by vicious weapons of misfortune. O Venerable Lama, in order that I may be empowered to free all beings from samsara's tears, inspire me quickly to attain the perfection of Buddhahood, the 3 spontaneously produced kayas. In other words, to bring together the 2 bodhicittas, the aspiration to enlightenment is the best way to fulfill love and compassion. But that compassion can only become extraordinary if we can see beyond the ordinary I grasping or self grasping or ego grasping, if we can achieve the wisdom of non-duality. Inspire me to cut the tight ropes of the 8 worldly concerns that bind the mind in confusion, so that I might practice Dharma with single-pointed concentration and accomplish the yogas of the sutras and Tantra path. O gracious Guru, bestow on me your inspiring blessings that throughout this life, in the bardo, and all future lives, I may never be parted from masters of the great way. I may be able to help mature and free the world. So that's a simple little sadhana written by the 7th Dalai Lama. If you don't like the little aspiration at the end, you can just write your own. Or you can grab one from any other source. Often that happens with different lamas writing such things. They will borrow some part from one of their favorite lamas and another passage from some other favorite lama, and they'll sort of rework them to make the poetry kind of work. So those of us, one of my gurus, he said that if we look at past masters, we see many great beings who are very, very inspirational, who bring great inspiration to us in our practice. And amongst those, Milarepa stands supreme. So those of us who practice 6 yogas of Naropa also practice the Amitaya Sayagriva lineage that Rachungpa brought to Tibet and gave to Milarepa, and came from Milarepa down to us today. Milarepa is certainly one of those beings whose role in the enlightenment history of the human experience, especially in Vajrayana, is unsurpassed. So it's a great honor and pleasure for me to be able to say a few words about Milarepa on this auspicious occasion, celebrating the completeness of his life, or the completion of his life, his Parinirvana, his enlightenment. And also a great pleasure to be able to recite the Milarepa name mantra, the Hasa Guru mantra, as it's sometimes known. So thanks very much to Jonas and Gosha for inviting me to do something on this occasion, kind of at the last moment. It was like only a week or so ago.
Yeah, Les, I think 3 days ago, we looked at the calendar and thought, oh, we should do something. Yeah.
Yes. So thank you
but
for
anyway,
being there.
It's been very wonderful for me to do it, and we did get a couple of 100 people joining in, and there might be a few more who tune in to the recording later, and we'll do some of the mantra. Now, I would like to say that you should all do 100,000 of this mantra before you die. Don't do them too quickly. You don't want to rush things.
Thank you so very much, Lama. We would like to offer you a Thanksgiving mandala for those precious teachings and transmission. Sa shi perke chukshek metak dram rera blingshen yede gyenpati sanje shingdo mikde pawa ye troko namda kshingla parasho idam guru ratna mandala kamne yeta yami.
Thank you so much, Lama.
Gyawa dim yarda da Jetsun mela ngutrub gyurne trawa chikyung melo pa dia sala gopasho. Janjo samcho rinpoche ma ke pana ke guchi ke pa nyamba me pa yon kone kondu pelwa show. See, if I lean back at the statue and painting from the cave, don't dance around me so much. If I come too close, the dakinis in Milarepa's aura start going up and down through my hair and all over my shoulders. And I start saying to, I said, is that a mosquito? Oh, no, it's a dakini. Yeah. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you so much, Lama. Thank you all for tuning in. Of course, in 2 days, Lama Glenn will start the teachings on the completion stage practices of White Heruka. Of course, most of you will be already registered, at least if you've been attending the healing series. Otherwise, we did share links on social media and via email on how to register in case you haven't been attending the previous teachings on the healing series of Lama Glenn.
And of course, you can have access to the previous part of that generation stage and empowerment.
Definitely.
So thank you so much, Lama. Very greatly appreciated. And we're going to make a use of the precious mantra and that transmission.
My buddy, Milarepa.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.